So, Steve, I know it's still a little warm outside, but you know what I'm thinking about?
I have no idea.
I'm thinking about the holidays already and what I'm going to get people as the best gift ever. And do you know what I'm going to get you, Steve?
Hopefully it's those raspberry dream bars you make every year. I really like those. Yeah.
Well, I might get you those, but I'm also going to get you a membership to Fine Gardening All Access.
Well, I actually already have that.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you work for them. But for those of you who don't have an All Access membership, it is a wonderful aspect of the fine gardening world. It allows you to get unlimited access to everything on our website. And what does that include, Steve?
There's videos. There's almost every article we've ever published.
Yeah, at least 20 years of archives.
Yeah, there's extras from various articles we've done, some plant IDs, tons of videos, podcasts, just all sorts of wonderful stuff on there.
That's right. You can find our podcast. You can find a plant list of everything that we talk about on the podcast. And you can also find photos of said plants. And it's for the bargain price of $39.95, which is only $10 more than a regular subscription to Fine Gardening.
So for $39.95, you get a subscription to Fine Gardening Magazine and then access to everything on the website, like everything.
Exactly. Absolutely everything. And that includes our super cool regional websites where each month you get a regional reporter from your area where you garden across the entire North American continent. And they're reporting on cool events, cool things you should be doing in your garden, and all sorts of stuff that you can't get anywhere else.
Who are these people?
These people are experts.
Oh, so they're not just like bloggers and like people,
No, these are experts and people who have actually written for Fine Gardening for many years.
So these are people who know the challenges of gardening in your region, is what you're saying.
That is exactly what I am saying. They are offering trustworthy and unique gardening advice. So again, that's all access, and it's a membership you can buy on our website for $39.95, which includes all access to the website and also the awesome print subscription to our magazine. Subscribe today.
# longest commercial ever. Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
Just not always the same ones.
You forgot your line, Danielle.
No, I didn't.
Well, there's a pause there.
Oh, I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the senior editor of Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Steve Aiken, the editor of Fine Gardening Magazine. And what are we talking about today, Danielle?
We are talking about better versions of classic favorites, which is a riff on an article that we've done several times, different iterations of that article, because people love it so much. So I'm really shocked that we've never done it as a podcast theme before.
Well, it's, so many cultivars come out, and it seems like sometimes they're only slightly different. I mean, why is any one better than the other, That's why it's great to have Richard Hockey doing what he does at the Chicago Botanic Garden, where he grows them all next to one another and tells you which ones perform better and which ones don't.
Exactly.
So it's good to know which ones are an actual improvement, which ones are just different, and which ones are kind of the same or just not very good, but they released them anyway,
So what do you think falls into the category of improved? Is it better disease resistance? Yes or no?
Oh, I think that could be one of the things.
Okay. Is it better appearance?
That could be one of the things.
Okay. Is it better name?
No.
Okay. So we have defined it. Better disease, pest resistance, better habits, better, but not better name.
Yeah. So the classic version has some shortcoming that the new version overcomes.
Yes.
It's just better. And, they can breed for that. And they have. And that's what a lot of the plants that I have, they wanted to overcome this problem and they have. Usually there's a trade-off somewhere, like where if you get more of X, you get less of Y or something like that. I haven't seen that in the plants that I'm talking about. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
So like when they
neither.
when they breed for like a bigger rose, so you get this
Yes.
massive rose, it loses fragrance.
Yes,
You
yes,
know.
exactly, exactly. Or, I think the classic that I started queuing into immediately is everybody was looking for the powdery mildew resistant phlox, right?
Yeah.
And the big thing was, oh, David is powdery mildew resistant. Well, not entirely, but they've been using David as a parent in a lot of these newer
Hmm.
phlox that actually are pretty disease resistant to powdery mildew and somewhat to rust as well. So phlox just keeps popping up in my head is that is the
It's
classic.
well, it's kind of still blooming now, and we are in such a stretch of humidity that powdery mildew is just
Running
loving it.
rampant.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there. See, I didn't think of phlox, but there are a number of powdery mildew resistant varieties out there. Some of which just occur naturally, and they just happen to
Yeah.
be, resistant, and some of which have been, intentionally bred for.
Bred.
But I think that's a thing. And then also when somebody breeds one that just looks better,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
or
definitely.
looks different enough to like, so well, why grow that one? We can grow this one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you know, so yeah, I think all those are
Totally.
good. Did you pick one that just has a better name? I love plant names, like cultivar names,
No,
and
but I that just came to me. Like, does that count as an improvement on a classic if it just has a much better name than the straight species or the original classic?
see, I would be tempted. I would give it an honorable mention, but I mean, ultimately, people listening are concerned with actual performance in their garden.
Yeah, no,
But
I did not pick one because of that. I wish I had now. Maybe we'll have an honorable mention at the end if we think of one as we record
mhm.
this. All right, so hit me up with your first plant here. So give me
well,
the
I
go ahead.
love I love black eyed. Thank you. You keep
Blah.
saying that and then interrupting me. Uh, I love black eyed Susans.
Mhm.
I think everybody loves black eyed Susans. They're like the quintessential late summer perennial. Um, and I've been ripping them out of my garden every time I see them for years
Why?
because I went to a plant breeder, and they were showing me all their plants, and they showed me this Rudbeckia that doesn't get leaf spot, the black spots on the leaves.
Okay.
Up until that point, I had no idea that Rudbeckia got spots on its leaves. And so I kind of like passed this over. I'm like, okay, whatever. You solved some minuscule problem that doesn't really exist. And then I went home, and well, I'll be darned. All my black-eyed Susans, the foliage is pretty much black with this septoria leaf spot. It's just awful. It's disgusting. And I had never noticed it before because I didn't pay attention to my Rudbeckia till they started blooming, and then that was fine.
Hmm.
So I've been ripping them out for years because I hate that, and because they've spread to the bejesus into
Hmm.
places where I don't want them to, and because they're too tall for where they are. But I miss my black-eyed Susan, so I was very pleased to come across American Gold Rush Rudbeckia,
Mm.
which it's a little smaller than the classic version. Is Goldsturm is the
Hmm.
cultivar name. Everyone just knows as a general black eyed. It's the quintessential black eyed Susan. When you close your eyes and think of it, that's what you're thinking of as Goldsturm. Um, but American Gold Rush stays a little smaller, but it does not get the leaf spot for two reasons. Supposedly, I read this. I don't. I'm not a pathologist, so I don't know. But the leaves are hairier, so I know that hairy leaves tend to fend off diseases a little better. And
Hmm.
the foliage is narrower, so it's smaller. There's a smaller area, and it's more
Oh.
able to fend off these diseases. So it doesn't get the leaf spot. Great. Okay, I totally want that. Um, it gets to be about 2 feet tall. I think Goldsturm gets to be a little bit taller. Um, so I think this one's a little smaller, and my clump forms like this nice dome to it.
Hmm.
It's not just an upright thing with flowers at the top plate. So the flowers kind of start sticking out the side too. So I have like this nice golden dome, just about starting now, which is late July, and then it goes on to September. As all Rudbeckias do. Do I even really need to explain what a black-eyed Susan looks like? I kind of
I
don't think
don't
I
think so.
do. Yeah,
I don't
but
think
it's
so.
it's a it's a it's like I said, it's a quintessential late summer perennial. It's classic North American native, and it's the story, as often happens, is that I guess we didn't pay much attention to it as a garden plant, but the Europeans loved it, and it went over there, and there's a lot of breeding that happened over there. And then we said, wow, look at these great plants. And they happened to come from our shores. American Gold Rush was actually bred here in the United States, intrinsic perennials. Yeah.
Brent Horvath.
Uh,
Out in Illinois, which it should be said, man, gets super humid. So if they're going to get any kind
yeah.
of fungal diseases whatsoever, they would get them out there.
Yeah. But so if you're looking for a native pollinator plant, low maintenance, full sun, drought tolerant, disease tolerant, late summer bloomer, Rudbeckia American Gold Rush, zones 3 to 9, which pretty much covers the United States. Zone 2 and Zone 10, people don't get mad at me. But
Zone 2 is writing in some nasty letters. So here's my question about it, because we've featured it in the magazine before. I want to know, the typical Goldstrom kind of starts blooming and stays nice, and then it does that weird splay thing where it gets so heavy and so laden with blossoms that the fireworks, which were once upright, start splaying off to the side. Because of the habit you described with this one, does it stay more upright with its blooms, or does it splay all out?
Well, it doesn't. Like I said, it forms like this little dome, and I've never had like splaying be an issue.
Okay, good.
So I mean, we're not. I haven't grown it for a long time, but if I did have that, start to have that issue, that to me means it's time to divide it.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't really had that splaying issue with the regular black-eyed Susans either.
You haven't? Oh my gosh.
It might be that like I wouldn't care, just as long as it had those flowers and they were sticking up somewhere. Like I kind of wouldn't care.
I think I notice it just because I improperly, actually no, it sighted itself along my walkway. So I noticed that when the black-eyed Susans come into full bloom, I think I have Goldstrom, they come into bloom. It's awesome. It's great. It's along the pathway. And then the FedEx guy has a conniption fit with me about a month later because they're splayed off into the middle of the pathway and he's whacking them constantly as he's going by. So I only notice it because of improper sighting in my own garden.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, I know I'm currently dodging some echinacea on my back walkway, which has kind of flopped into the way. And I have I have Rudbeckia maxima, like the really tall one. Yeah. And that gets super tall. So when it flops, like it really flops. And it just reaches out and, crosses the pathway. So that might happen. But like I said, I haven't grown American Gold Rush long enough to know.
If it does.
And really, like the guy has to brush by a flower, deal with it. Like it's not that big a deal.
I mean, maybe it's the 90-degree weather and humidity, which is really what is making him upset. But he's taking it out on my Rudbeckia.
So why does he drives past it?
Our FedEx guy he walks up this front steps and delivers the packages by the door. Did your FedEx guy just throw it out the window?
Our FedEx guys have to go through the gauntlet of the Amsonia hubrichtii, which is spread over the path, and he sort of has to go through it sort of like a curtain, like a low curtain.
Oh my God!
It depends on how brave they are. Like once they've walked through it once, they realize like, oh, it's just soft and feathery, it's no big deal. Like
it won't hurt me.
Yeah, and like they try to dance between it, and you can't because there's just no way.
No getting through. Yeah. So interestingly, okay, I'm going to start off with a plant that actually isn't in my garden, but I chose it because it has a better habit and a better behavior pattern than its straight species. And this is matcha ball ash leaf spirea, not a spirea. It's a sorbaria sorbifolia. So it's got this really, really cool, and the cultivar name is actually lemon green, but it's matcha ball. It's a trademark name. And Sobaria, I've always wanted it. It's got this beautiful leaf to it that almost looks to me like an aurelia. It's really, really segmented leaves. really, really kind of rough veining on the leaves. That looks really, really cool. Looks a lot like an ash tree's leaves, which probably is why it's called ash leaf spirea.
I was going to go sumac on that. Like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
sumac. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Especially this particular variety, matcha ball, because it's got this beautiful kind of chartreuse, more yellow in more sun, more green in more shade color to it. So it looks a lot like tiger eye sumac to me. But so I've always wanted a sobaria because I like the texture. I like that it's this cool foliage plant. It puts on new growth and the tips are red when it puts on the new growth. But man, I have heard horror stories about how that plant runs in the garden. And it's like demons. It starts poking up its little horns all over the place. So I've always shied away from it, never wanted to plant it for that reason. But this matcha ball, which is a new variety, I think for 2020, supposedly is not a runner. It stays really small, really compact, 2 to 3 feet tall, about 3, sometimes 4 feet wide, they're saying. And this is a plant we featured in our new plant section for 2020 because I was so intrigued by it. But I ended up getting it for a charity garden that Fine Gardening did. We got a supply of it, planted it in this charitable garden that we did. And I've been watching this thing for the past 2 months, month and a half, just really come into its own. It's kind of pushing new growth now, middle of July, which is weird. That's red on the tips. It has stayed compact. I can't speak to what it's going to do next year, but that is supposedly its claim to fame, that it's not going to run all over the place. And trust me, I'll probably hear about it if it does. But yeah, it's just a really, really cool plant that I always wanted, but I was scared because it's a beast. So this is the unbeastly version for zones 3 to 7.
So what color is the foliage now?
The foliage right now, because it's in more sun in this garden that I planted it, it's like Sun King Aurelia. It's yellow verging on chartreuse. So it's kind of
limey color.
Limey, yeah, bright lime.
Yeah.
And it not grown for any kind of spectacular blooms, just grown strictly for the foliage. And the texture on it is awesome. Totally awesome.
First question is what's a matcha ball?
So matcha is a drink, right?
Okay.
Like a caffeinated, it's a caffeinated green tea-ish type of drink that is kind of that color, like a bright green color. Mm-hmm. And it forms a ball. So maybe, I don't know. Why didn't they just go with the cultivar name? Levin Green. That's great. That's a great name.
My other question is that normally with this species, the cultivar that's recommended and beloved is SEM, S-E-M.
Yeah, which runs.
So it runs. So that's why this one's a little better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So not as SEM doesn't run as much as the straight species, but I actually looked at getting SEM for my hospital hill to kind of help with erosion control. Because a lot of times It's recommended for erosion control just for that reason, because it goes all over the place. I mean, you see it planted, and it is literally, when it starts poking out of the ground, the growth is red. It literally looks like devil horns. So yeah. So I have high hopes for this matcha ball because I really want this plant, but I really don't want it taken over my garden.
So if it looks like devil horns, they should have named it Dio.
Yeah. That's why you're not in charge of new plant names. That is why.
No, that's why I should be in charge of new plant names. All sorts of 80s music references would come out.
That's right. The offshoot of Slayer. So that was mine. Do you have any shrubs on your list? Because usually the way it goes, no. I do all shrubs and you do all perennials.
Yeah, I don't have any shrubs.
All right. So hit me with your next perennial.
So many cultivars come out, and I just say why. We all do this. Like, why did they release this plant? And especially with annuals. Like, why? Why did they come out with this one?
Slightly more purple than last year's slightly more purple.
Yeah. The differences are so minute that we just can't really notice them. And I said that when Sea Heart Brunnera came out, I said that looks just like Jack Frost Brunnera, which is a great plant. They both had the big heart shaped leaves covered in white, and only the veins are remaining green. And it looks amazing amongst all the other shade plants. All the greens of shade, and you've got this nice big silver heart shaped thing happening there. And so I grow Jack Frost, and it was a great plant. It would peter out in summer though, like it would start looking ragged. Not like once the heat set in, kind of like once the kids got out of school, it would start fading, and then kind of give up midsummer with some new growth, pointing up, and then I would cut everything back so I'd have a hole for a few weeks, and then it would kind of by fall I would know that I still had I still had a plant and it was probably going to come back in spring. But Sea Heart apparently, and I've been hearing a lot about this, looks just the same, but doesn't fade out in summer. Like heat and humidity are not a problem for this cultivar. So for me, that makes it a great improvement. I mean, it's a performance issue. Jack Frost is great, but here's this other one that looks just as good and doesn't struggle with it doesn't struggle with heat and humidity. So it's always going to look good. So we have now a new cultivar that's taken away kind of the downside of Jack Frost. So if people struggle with Jack Frost, go with Sea Heart. This to me is why you release a cultivar. Like it looks the same, but it performs better.
Yeah.
Like this is perfect. It also it also has the added benefit of being resistance to foliar nematodes, which affect other Brunnera, but they kind of don't affect Sea Heart. And I don't recognize the damage of foliar nematodes. I know something eats the leaves of mine. I just never, whether it's a black vine weevil or a slug that starts but then realizes.
I was just going to say slugs.
but the foliage is a little hairy. So like they start to eat and they realize like, oh, forget it, and they give up. Like I don't know what eats the leaves, but something starts to eat the leaves, and that's when it starts to look ragged, But I just figured, well, that's the price of this. But apparently, you do not have that problem again with Sea Heart. So again, an improved, better performance in the garden. So this is a plant for partial to full shade. So for all the shade lovers out there, zones 4 to 8A.
7. Oh, okay.
I've seen 8A. I saw 9 somewhere.
What?
Excuse me. And but
Brunnera? Well, maybe because it is heat resistant.
Maybe. Right. But the breeders of the plant, the distributors say 8A. So if you're in zone 8, you're kind of iffy. Like it might be a little too much heat for it, but you might want to give it a shot. It's going to get to be about 6 to 12 inches tall. Maybe twice as wide. Mine, my Jack Frost hasn't spread that much. Moist to average soil. Again, I haven't been able to give mine very much moisture. It's just regular garden soil, but it prefers it moister. But a definite improvement over a favorite cultivar.
So, did we get this particular variety as a sample plant a couple years ago? Is that where you acquired your Sea Heart?
No. If we did get these as samples, and somebody took them before I got there. I don't know anything about that. Suddenly, the look on the face, like, no, I don't know anything. We have gotten samples in of a couple Brunnera cultivars, and
okay. I was just wondering if that's what it was. I feel like we got one in last year, and I struggled with whatever that cultivar was, so I was curious if that was the same one. But yeah, did you mention the beautiful flowers? I mean, people do know, right?
I didn't. Yeah. So maybe not. In spring, it gets those. Oh God, I have to describe the color. It's like in the lavender blue.
It's blue. It's true blue. Forget-me-nots.
They're forget-me-not looking flowers. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Forget-me-not looking flowers in spring. And they come up like just as the foliage is starting to come up. So it's a really early show. And it helps, hold your interest while the foliage is just getting going. And there's another cultivar. Oh God, I forget the name. It's sea foam or sea. It has sea as the first word, and that in comparison to brunnera looking glass. So looking glass has more silver
Silver.
and less veination on it, and that one is supposed to be superior to looking glass too. I haven't grown either one of those to know,
Mm.
but I'm hearing wonderful things about both the ones that start with C, Sea Heart
Yeah.
especially. Yeah.
I also, we should point readers towards go to our website because one of the Richard Hockey, who was aforementioned in this podcast, he did a plant trial on brunnera. I believe Sea Heart makes an appearance, and several other of the newer cultivars do make an appearance in that. So go to finegardening.com and look up under Richard Hockey's byline. You will see his brunnera trial. To be able to see, kind of the differences in the leaves too, because, you say a little bit more silver and you think, oh, well, that's not a big deal. But when you actually see it, wow, that's a
Yeah.
significant difference when
Yeah.
something has a little bit more silver in the shade.
Yeah.
Um,
I can tell you what Richard said because I read it yesterday.
what did
But
he say?
well, no,
No,
then no one will go to our website.
that's right.
We need the
Drive
traffic.
them.
Traffic.
Yes, go
But
to the website.
but for those of you who don't want to, he said Jack Frost is great. I think it was the first one he mentioned. Like Jack
Yes,
Frost being pretty much the same one, and that Sea Heart was one of his new kids on the block. Like
nice.
he hadn't had enough time with it to really say that it's better than Jack Frost, but he was
But
really
it was
impressed with.
showing
Yeah,
promise. Yeah,
yeah.
showing promise. Well, so all right, speaking of sample plants that I know you got one of and I didn't take them because you were kind enough to actually set one aside for me. A few years ago, you remember you reached out to some different breeders and you said, "Hey, what do you guys got going on for dwarf shrubs?"
Oh
And
yeah,
we got a cool selection of several different types of dwarf shrubs. I think there was a viburnum in there. And also, that was in that crew of new dwarf shrubs to try out was Invincible Wee White, which was Hydrangea arborescens. And I don't even know why I bother doing this, but the actual cultivar is NCHA5. All right, whatever. Wee White, Invincible Spirit, a part of that whole Invincible series, rather. And it's a smooth hydrangea. It's zones 3 to 8. We kind of all know what a smooth hydrangea is. It's got those kind of, I don't know, aspen tree looking leaves that are, I don't know, pointed, almost like a fat arrow, dark green. Um, I love smooth hydrangea. It's a reliable bloomer. It's the one that blooms first in my garden. However, what I have noticed, thanks to you pointing it out to me this year and last year, it flaps. The first rainstorm you get, this thing flops over and doesn't stand back up. I mean, I have 3 sizable shrubs right now of regular smooth hydrangea arborescens that are filled with blossoms. Damned if I can see them, though, because they're basically all dragging on the ground right now. It looks like a giant dinosaur came and sat on all my shrubs. So this Wee White is amazing because it's only 30 inches tall, 30 inches white, super strong stems. And because it's that smaller stature, these beautiful puffball white flowers on it stay upright. And the rainstorms haven't kicked it down, and it doesn't look like a big giant dinosaur came and sat on my plant. And it's a great improvement on that shrub, that it's this dwarf shrub, first of all, which I think is great. I love dwarf shrubs. And it's not going to flap over for you, and takes full shade to partial shade. It doesn't really like full sun. I have one that's on the corner in full sun. It's starting to burn, especially now in the middle of July. But moist, well-drained soil. I have it in lean, very dry soil, and it's doing quite well. But the big thing is it doesn't flop. It's a smooth hydrangea, reliable blooms, reliable for all the reasons that you love smooth hydrangea. But Wee White does not flop. So that's an improvement.
So I'm supposed to disagree with you on things.
Bring
and
it.
I can't because
Yeah.
I think the exact same thing about Wee White. You're right on the money with most of what you say. I think it's a great great little shrub. I have it. I love it. It doesn't flop. I also have limetta, which is a bigger.
Mm,
It's got to be about 4 feet tall. That one isn't flopping for me, but that might be because there is another shrub like kind of right in front of it. So if it flops,
propping it up.
it's propping it up. It could be. I don't know exactly what's happening there, but I'm not having the same problem, the flopping problem with limetta. But wee white, yes, love it all. The only thing I would question is full shade.
I have mine. It's on the north side of the house. It gets maybe 3 hours of sunlight,
But
maybe.
I wouldn't call that full shade.
I mean, and it's underneath a giant stewardia tree,
Yeah. So
so
mine,
it's getting like not much at all.
yeah, mine doesn't get much sun at all either, but it's leaning towards the sun.
Oh,
It's to the east of it is a massive magnolia tree. Like it
mm,
gets no sun, until maybe midday. Then it gets a brief glimpse for a couple hours, and then in the
yeah.
afternoon again shade. But it's leaning a little bit. You can tell it's leaning a little bit towards
Mm,
the sun. It's leaning towards the southwest, um, but not so much that it's like, oh my god, get me out of here. But
yeah.
it is saying that I would prefer a little more sun if you could get that for me, Steve. And my answer is yeah, no, it's not happening.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
not happening.
But great shrub, wee white, great shrub, and I'm jealous when you talk about that because then I don't get to talk about it, and I feel like it's my plant.
All right, Steve. So you agreed with my last plant. So let's see if I will agree with your third plant on the roster today.
Yeah, I can't imagine why you wouldn't. It's a wonderful,
Why,
but
why would anyone disagree with you?
well, it's a straight up better variety.
All right.
If just in terms of looks, okay.
Okay.
So
Look.
the trend in penstemon these days,
Mhm.
especially penstemon digitalis species, is towards red foliage, and I think this started with Husker red, which was the first red foliage plant to come out of that species. And there's a better one, and there's a lot more cultivars out there. The best one, because we're growing a bunch in the test garden, the best one
Mhm.
out there is it stands out is Blackbeard penstemon.
Mm.
Um, and so this one gets deep purple maroon foliage right from the get go, and then holds it all season long. Like Husker
A
red will fade.
rarity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Husker
that's a
red
rarity.
will fade to green or will start out green. There's green in there somewhere, but this one stays like a striking, deep, rich, glossy, purpley. That purpley maroon color that plants get. That's so wonderful. This is noticeably different than Husker red because you want that red foliage, but you only get it part time from Husker red or most time from Husker red. You get it all the time from Blackbeard, um, and it also doesn't flop. So
Which is good because
Husker Red and a lot of the other cultivars will eventually
all
splay and
over.
flop over. Blackbeard, I've not had that problem with. Much better variety. So this is a two to in between 2 and 3 feet tall.
Okay.
I could see 3 feet. About 2 feet wide. It's taller than it is wide. It's one of those plants. Full sun, average to dry soil, is drought tolerant plant. Like I said, no flopping, dark purple leaves. The stems are dark purple, so it has very moody, intense coloration. The flowers are like a lilac purple, somewhere in that range, whatever you guys want to call it.
No, I think you did a
With
good job. That was right on. It is. It's a lilac colored flower.
well, I spent 5 minutes trying to decide should I call it lavender purple or lilac purple, and then lavender lilac or this I don't know, and so I
I,
went with lilac because it has
I think
fewer
you nailed
letters.
it.
But then they have like white insides, like they're like there's like a tube, and I don't know if it's a calyx, and then the inside of the flower is white or whatever it is, but they're lilac purple with white. And hummingbirds, it's the tubular flower, so hummingbirds
I
love
love
it.
them.
The bumblebees love it. This also is a Native American. It's a cultivar of a Native American species. Loves doesn't love, but like it takes heat and humidity and no problem. Some people have had issues with penstemon and the heat and humidity. This one doesn't have a problem with that. Very cold hardy, down to zone 3. I found zones 3 to 8 on this. Just a wonderful, wonderful plant for a full sun setting. It does its thing kind of early. I would say late spring, early summer is when it's flowering. I'm as good with seasons as I am with color. Like what I consider summer. Most people consider, well, it's late spring. To me, if you're wearing shorts, it's summer. But you can be wearing shorts in mid-May, which is around here is late spring. Anywho, it does its thing early, but it holds on to that purple color, and then even the seed pods are like a dark purple or black or something like that. So it just has this wonderful moody presence in full sun, where everything's bright. You need something with some weight and some tone to it to kind of give some visual weight to your border. And Blackbeard I found is the best one of all the purple leaf cultivars.
So what is the difference between Blackbeard and Pocahontas? Because isn't Pocahontas a dark-leafed lavender flower version?
Yeah, and this Blackbeard might be a seedling of Pocahontas. And it's the difference exactly would probably be in the non-flopping and holding its color deeper and longer.
Foliage color.
So I read one trusted source that said that Blackbeard was a seedling from Pocahontas, and then I read another source that said this was a cross between Penstemon digitalis and Penstemon calicosus, which maybe Pocahontas is that, and then this is who knows
that mix as well.
Yeah, but see, I don't know where the red would then come in from that, like where you would get the red genes from that. So, but a wonderful plant. Pocahontas is good too.
So I'm only familiar with Pocahontas. I wasn't familiar with Blackbeard when you sent it along, and I thought, from your description, it sounds like Pocahontas, but I guess we've determined, it's not going to flop. It's the superior to Pocahontas.
Yes. To my knowledge, as of this airing. Next year I might be saying something completely different. But this spring when I walked into the test garden to plant things, there were these deep maroon penstemons sticking up. I'm like, who is that? We had some leftovers from a plant sale. What is that? It's very striking. I got to know who that is. And I walk over, and luckily we had the plant tag still on the ground, and it was Blackbeard. And so I was looking at the other penstemon cultivars, which were emerging green with a little bit of purple, and things like that. Like this guy was purple from the get-go,
That's
and just
cool.
he so stood out. It was really impressive. Plus, I listened to a podcast on Blackbeard just the other day. So,
The pirate?
The pirate.
Oh.
Is there another Blackbeard that I don't know? Is it?
I mean, I don't know. I think there's a rum called Blackbeard. So I don't know. It could have been a podcast all about rum. I was excited for 2 seconds.
He had a short run as a pirate. He used to put like candles in his beard, and his beard was so bushy. Like somebody said, like it went up to like his eyebrows and stuff like that. But he would put candles in his beard to make him look more menacing. He would coat his beard with wax first so it didn't catch fire. But he would have the tapers in his beard. Yeah. Did
he end up dying by lighting himself on fire?
No, he retired and was, but then he came out of retirement, got captured. Like they went to great lengths to capture him, and he was beheaded. And the rumor is that his skull was then covered in silver and used as a drinking cup around the Virginia area where he was captured.
What? Also, what does one do when one is a retired pirate?
Not get caught, live off your doubloons, not have to run from
off your booty.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's too funny.
You just learned the most fascinating things from a podcast, wouldn't you agree?
You really do. Case in point, here we are on our podcast. So we're going to bring it back to plants somehow instead of pirates. In case you tuned in midstream in this podcast, no, this isn't the pirate podcast. This is the plants podcast.
Well, maybe we should have more pirates in it. Just
Maybe,
tossing it out there.
maybe that's our expert testimony today is a
Could be.
pirate. All right. So you were with me when I bought this next plant that I'm going to talk about. We took a field trip to, I think, a since closed nursery called Variegated Plant
Oh
Nursery.
yeah, yeah.
That was in central Connecticut. We had gotten an email. I think they were going out of business.
It's in northeastern Connecticut. It's not central. There's nothing central about it.
For those of you at home, Steve swears that he knows where things are in Connecticut, and
I do.
when I start mentioning towns around where I live, which we live quite a distance away, he just totally glazes over and says, "Oh no, that's southern Connecticut."
It's up in the upper corner. It's up by Sturbridge. It's right near the Massachusetts border. It's past Yukon.
Oh, is it past Yukon? I thought it was
Yeah.
like right off of the Yukon area, like off of the University of Connecticut area. No? All right, I'll let you have this one.
No,
Anywho,
the map and geography lets me have this one.
So anywho, we go to this nursery. We had gotten hey, going out of business sale. So you and I scooped up all these plants that were in smaller containers. A lot of them were seedlings. We weren't sure what some of them were, but one of these plants that I picked up, I don't know if you remember this, was a small sapling, rising sun eastern redbud. So it's a Cercis canadensis. JN2 is its cultivar name, but it's the rising sun trademarked. Cercis canadensis. So, a native it's off of our eastern redbud, our native eastern redbud, which is so beautiful. And I struggled with this because is this a better version? And I came on the side of yes, it is, because the one knock against eastern redbud is once those beautiful magenta pea-like flowers cover the tree in spring, what you're left with for the rest of the year with this small tree is just plain green leaves, heart-shaped, perfectly fine, kind of meh, but perfectly fine. But the cool thing about Rising Sun is it's got yellowy golden foliage. So, and the new growth is a little bronzy orange. So you have this great flowering that happens on the tree. And then you have this cool foliage that maintains throughout the rest of the year. I did everything I possibly could to kill this small sapling that I got of this tree. I stuck it on my hospital hill. So 0 water, well-drained soil, totally not what it wants. It wants moist, well-drained soil. Lean soil, not what it wants. And it has survived. It hasn't exactly thrived, but that's completely because I have it in the worst possible scenario. It's an awesome tree. It only is supposed to get 8 to 12 feet tall, around 8 feet wide. So in the tree realm, it stays relatively small. It's zones 5 to 9. And just a beautiful, interesting foliage for a tree that, let's face it, I love every red bud I see. I love every red bud known to man. And this is just one of them that I really love.
So, of course, I don't remember you buying this plant because when it doesn't matter who we're with, but whenever I'm buying plants, I'm only focused on my plants.
Mm-hmm.
And so I may look at your cart and be jealous of what you're buying, but I'm really just focused on my plants.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember you buying this. But it was interesting. The last thing you said is that you love all red buds.
I do.
So this is the best of the bunch. So not forest pansy. You would pick this one because forest pansy doesn't have green leaves. It has the reddish foliage.
So the thing with forest pansy is I noticed that over time, in the spring, it's got that beautiful red foliage. And then as you mature and go through the summer, that red foliage tends to get a little muddy and a little more greeny red. And then it's kind of nondescript. I don't know. That one never did it for me. And plus, I'm more, if you give me a burgundy plant or a chartreuse color plant, I'm going to go with chartreuse all day long. But that's just, that's me. That's what I like. But as far as, there's a lot of new new-ish cultivars of, just the genus Cercis and Cercis canadensis, the eastern redbud. You've got alley cats and variegated versions now. But this rising sun, I just got to give it to it because, I mean, honestly, I'm giving it the worst conditions I could possibly give it. Oh, did I mention it's in full sun, which for a chartreuse plant, it should be burning, but it's not. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to give it up to this plant just because it's doing really good things despite me trying to kill it repeatedly,
Yeah, I
constant.
think the lesson here, one lesson is that the recommendations for plants don't always mean that that's what it has to have. That's
Yeah.
probably what it prefer. Every plant would prefer loose soil, just the proper amount of moisture,
Yes.
but
Moist, well drained soil. That's
right, like,
like,
well, okay,
who has that?
right. It's like drinking 64, ounces of water every day. Like nobody does that, but maybe that's the ideal. You do that?
I do.
I found out that was completely made up. Like that, there's no science behind that whatsoever.
No.
But so just because you don't have the conditions for that the plant tag says, you can still try it.
Mm.
It depends on your risk tolerance, really, the cost of the plant. But yeah, so now we know that this red bud can survive dry, full sun.
Mm-hmm. It can, yeah. And that's not to say it would probably look far more spectacular in better conditions and given a little bit more care on the on the initial planting, but
Mm-hmm.
it's doing fine. It's persevering. So hey, I give it a thumbs up.
Okay, no, with the exception of the brunnera, Danielle, all the plants that sure. Oh, with the exception of the brunnera, Danielle, all of the plants I have mentioned have been cultivars of native plants. So I just want to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
People are digging, North American natives. The people who are listening from overseas don't give a hoot, but yeah. You too.
Two
You
of my
too.
three.
Yeah.
Two of my three, the hydrangea arborescens and wait,
Cercis.
what else did I?
Cercis.
Oh yeah, and the Cercis canadensis. Yeah, there we go. So give it up for the native plants.
All right. They've
all right.
gone.
So my yeah, go ahead. So what's your next one? Are you going to make it 4 for 4?
No, it's a horribly evasive plant that I want to recommend. No, I'm just kidding. This is a cultivar of a beloved native species. I love little blue stem, Schizocerium scoparium. It's a wonderful ornamental grass which is a beautiful upright habit of these blue stems, like this grass with just like these blue, like they're not quite needles, like they're really tall, but they're very narrow, almost like spiky foliage that sticks straight up. And then, in fall, they get like these reddish, brownish, amber, purpley tones to them, and they look just amazing. Just a wonderful native plant. But right as they're looking their best, right as they're getting that autumn color, and they get those little poofs of seed heads, so they're really getting their interest is at their peak. They flop, and they don't just flop. They kind of like sprawl and smush everything around them. I mean, imagine a drunken, Bluto Blutarski from Animal House passed out in your living room, like that kind of flop. And so it's terrible. It ruins everything.
That might be my favorite analogy that you've ever made. that might be.
But I mean, it's just like, oh God, you can't get around it,
So messy.
Right? And it might be that this only happens in like when it has like rich soil or too much moisture. I certainly do not give it too much moisture. I don't do anything to my soil, so it's not too, but they flop everywhere and they look like heck exactly when they should be looking at their best. And so what would be the best kind of breeding would be to breed one that doesn't flop, or to find one that doesn't flop. And so enter standing ovation, little blue stem. Perfectly named too, so you get what it's about. Standing ovation, like yes, it stands up and you want to applaud for it.
Hmm.
So many cultivar names, you have no idea what, like, Gatsby's moon. Like, what does that have to do with your beloved hydrangea? Like, that has nothing to do with anything, you know. But standing ovation, little blue stem, you get it. You get what this thing's
Yeah.
about. This has all the wonderful qualities of this fabulous native grass, but it stands up. And there
Hmm.
are other cultivars. I have to be honest. There are other cultivars out there that stand up now. A lot of the newer cultivars resist flopping. I haven't grown them, so I can't recommend them. But standing ovation, to me, is the little blue stem to have because it has all the good parts of Schizocerium scoparium with none of the downside.
Hmm.
Zones 3 to 9, so really
Huge.
pretty much anywhere can grow it. It gets to be about 2 to 4 feet tall. Yeah, not quite as
Which is a
wide.
big range. I mean, I feel like they do
Yeah,
such a poor job with giving grass sizes.
well,
Having just done a medium-sized grass article I'm working on, that they do a terrible job. It's like it's 3 to 8 feet tall. Well, what does that mean?
it means two things: variable conditions, and
Could
then
yes.
like, do you include the height with the flowers
Well,
or the
that
the
was
inflorescence?
yes. So
So
that
so
was my
I
issue.
would. This is definitely going to be over 2 feet tall, and then with the inflorescences, might get around three, maybe a little bit higher. So
Hmm.
in that range, so that's what I would expect with it. But like I said, North American native, drought tolerant.
Hmm.
Apparently, birds like the seeds. I can't. I've seen goldfinches like kind of like clinging to the stems a little bit.
Hmm.
But I can't. To me, grasses grass seed doesn't feel like a big thing for birds. But I read it in like 5 different places that the birds love the seeds of little blue stem. So
Interesting. It could be
standing
just the
ovation.
time of year, they're looking for some different food sources, but that's cool because it's a wildlife plant.
Yeah.
Like it. I like it. Yeah, I love the blue stems because so many I'm going to get hate mail for this. So many grasses to me look like and probably do grow on the side of the highway. As you're traveling around North America, nondescript green grass throws up a plume of taupish brown. Wow. Bowl me over with that. Sounds like it's a great grass to me.
But
Sign me up.
but
But this is a
but then
pretty one.
but put that plant into a garden and it looks great. I mean,
Yeah,
it can't. It's not the plant's fault that it's growing amidst garbage. You can't hold
right.
that against it. And yeah, I
Right.
see I see a little blue stem all over the place, and I think it's great. And in fact, the first place I ever grew little blue stem was from I harvested seedlings off the
From
hillside outside of our old building where we used
our
to be.
old office. Yeah.
Before the landscaper started mowing it, there
Yeah.
was there was
Yeah.
Asclepius up there. There was all sorts of, like, it was just loaded with little blue stem. And in the fall, it was just amazing because you had all these tall, waving, bluish, reddish things going on. And I said, "Oh my God, I've got to have some of that." So I harvested some seed and grew it, at my old house. Just a wonderful plant.
Yeah,
And
this
so
is
yeah,
one of those few grasses though, like that you do see growing on the side of the highway, and I'm like, ooh, I like that. You are not just a green, forgettable grass on the side of the highway. You are pretty. I will dig you up. I will take you home and make you mine.
I will. There is a grass growing in the fine gardening test garden that has really attractive flowers, makes a nice little clump. That really is just some little dude who seated himself in there, and started to grow. And I couldn't. I'm like, I don't think I planted that there. I think that's
What?
and so like I let him go, and I'm like, well, he looks good,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Let
And I'm
him
like,
do his
okay,
thing.
okay, go. So he's formed like a nice big clump. He has like these nice flowers to him. I I have to get somebody to ID what this thing is. But this is just like your common, like, grass. And a
But
lot of these grasses, when you look at them, like, growing on the roadside or the weeds as you're pulling, I'm like, that's actually kind of a cute grass with those flowers. Like, if I let this go,
hmm
this would probably look pretty good. But the
hmm
habits, are such that they might be kind of like scraggly in habit, or something like
yeah,
that, or
yeah, yeah.
so. But yeah, don't displant just because it's growing on the roadside. I mean, it's no.
That is,
I,
see, that's
I,
another rule. That's
I'm
another
your first
rule.
piece of hate mail on that. I'm giving you hate mail right now.
No, but my point being is that seeing little blue stem on the side of the road, it makes you want to pull over and dig it up. It really does, as opposed to I'm sorry, some of the other grasses.
Well, it's also goes to perspective. So we were
Yeah.
growing. We were at a garden out here in Connecticut where they were growing some gazania, really vibrant flowered plant, and we had somebody from California out, and they're like, "Ew, gazanias! Those are like a ditchweed." Where I come from, I'm like, "What are you talking about? These are amazing." You know.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. It's all in the perspective. It's all in the perspective. All right. So I started with a plant that I obtained this year that was new, put in someone else's garden, and have just been super impressed with. And I'm going to end with one of those too. And this is Cabernet Splash High Bush Blueberry. And I know if you've listened to this podcast, you know that I have advocated for using blueberries of all sizes and shapes in ornamental beds because it's a great plant. You get shiny dark green leaves. You get beautiful fall color. You get spring, white flowers that the pollinators absolutely love. Sometimes they're a little bit fragrant. You get fruit, you can eat it. I mean, it's just blueberries do it for me. I think that it's just an awesome, awesome plant to incorporate. Now, I did a garden plan earlier this spring for a friend, and I wanted a dwarf Fothergilla. That's, I had this spot for this shrub that, I wanted it to have spring flowers that just kind of made sense in the grand scheme of things. I was looking for something that would, satisfy the pollinator need in early spring. I was looking for something that stayed relatively compact. I was looking for something that got great fall color. I could not find a dwarf Fothergilla to save my life. So instead, I stumbled upon this, excuse me, this Cabernet Splash High Bush Blueberry, which cultivar name VACBRI1. Anywho, Cabernet Splash. It explains it. It is that dark green foliage of a blueberry plant, but year round, it has this beautiful, dark, almost red wine stain all over the leaves. When it first comes out in spring, it's primarily apparently very, very maroonish red, the foliage is. And then slowly it kind of fades back and forth where you get more of a mottled effect of green and red on the foliage. So it takes this really awesome edible dwarf shrub. I don't know if I said how tall it gets at this point, but it's only 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 to 3 feet wide. So this is a smaller high bush blueberry, zones 5 to 8. But I've just been super impressed with how it's also done in this garden. And it took the one thing about blueberries, which is that time period where it's just a green shrub, and it made it so much cooler because it added this splash of red to the foliage that carries you through those, doldrums of summer before you really get some wicked fall color because it turns bright burgundy red in the fall. I would also think that this would be a great alternative to burning bush, which is highly invasive. And I feel like this is my new go-to plant. I went back to the nursery after installing it in this friend's garden to get myself some, and they were sold out. So this will be the number one plant on my list next year for my own garden because I really, really would like them.
Also a native.
Also a native, Vaccinium corymbosum.
Yeah, but I want to say, if you like things that have red wine stains on them, I have a number of button-down shirts, and that have red wines. If that's what you like. So, no, I agree with you on blueberries, and I recommend them for all the same reasons you do, like all season interest, spring flowers, early summer berries, fall color, just a lovely, lovely shrub. Again, native. You have to fight the birds for the berries, but that's okay. That's an okay fight to have. Just a great one. And this is an improvement. Why?
I think that it's an improvement just because it's got a little bit more compact of a structure, but really the one time that blueberries kind of let me down, because even in winter they kind of have almost a red twig dogwood effect. They do have a little bit of red to the stems, so they look great in winter. But the one time that blueberries do kind of let me down is in that late summer into early fall. They're just a green blob. There's not really much going on. It's just green foliage. And so this just takes
So
that one time period and it's like, boom.
you have a what have you done for me lately attitude.
Yes. Yes. I mean, have you met me?
And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk about old favorites.
Oh, how the kids love their music, with their dubstep, their emo, and their hip-hop. The other day, I heard a teenage boy explaining his new favourite band to his father. This band was fresh and lit, unlike Taylor Swift, who is cringe. I stan these guys, he told his dad. The band's name was The Beatles. So we see the ebb and flow of popularity and coolness. Newer seems to be better, but quality can never really be denied. Frank Sinatra was more my parents' cup of tea, but no one will ever sing That's Life or Summer Wind, or anything really, the way he did. Now I'm sure Steve and Danielle, well, Danielle mainly, have got you all excited to try some newer varieties. Some certainly are improvements in disease resistance or overall performance. But don't lose track of the older versions. They are classics for a reason. Just because your grandmother grew gladioli doesn't make them bad plants. When all the penstemon cultivars you see have purple leaves, then the straight species with its green foliage will then be noteworthy. Varieties like Blackbeard, Pocahontas, and Husker Red will be cringe, but penstemon digitalis will still be lit. Proper lit.
Now, I want to say, Danielle, before anybody gets up in arms, that we are not disparaging Taylor Swift in any way. My daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, implored me to make sure that people knew that we are not dragging T Swift.
No, and what is her posse called?
I don't know, but one does not drag T Swift, I was told. And that is not what was happening. Peter was just recounting a conversation that he overheard.
No, so the Swifters, it's kind of like Beyonce's Beehive. I think, are they the Swifters? Don't write us, don't call us, don't hack our website, please. Don't do any of that. We're not gonna, no. We love Taylor Swift. And we also love Andy Keyes. He's our expert testimony, I believe, who wrote the article, Better Versions of Classic Favorites for Fine Gardening a few years ago.
Hi, my name is Andrew Keyes, and I'm the author of 2 garden books, Why Grow That When You Can Grow This, and Growing the Northeast Garden. I'm here to talk about better versions of classic garden favorites. Now, if you've been gardening for any length of time, you may have noticed there are some really popular plants out there that are actually not that easy to grow for all kinds of reasons. So what we're here to talk about today is the idea that there are plants that have similar qualities to those classic plants that are actually a lot more garden worthy in a lot of ways. So to start off, we have ornamental fruit trees like ornamental cherry and plum. These are great when they bloom in early spring. They're really pretty. The problems with them are that they tend to get pests and diseases and die off in a variety of ways. And after they bloom, they don't do a whole lot. Some of them have nice bark, things like that, but in general, they sort of fade into the background. So here are 3 types of small trees to try instead. The first one is shadblow. This is Amelanchier species and cultivars. There are lots of different types of these, but the one that I recommend most is Robin Hill. It's hardy in zones 4 to 9. And unlike most of the Amelanchiers, this one has pink flowers. They all bloom in early spring, and those flowers are followed by red berries. This tree grows about 25 feet high and wide. The second alternative I'd recommend for ornamental fruit trees is Chinese fringe tree, Caenathus retusus. This tree is hardy in zones 5 through 9, and it has really gorgeous white flowers late spring to early summer. Female plants will also have a blue fruit in late summer. This one grows 20 feet high and wide. And finally, I would really, really recommend redbuds as an alternative to ornamental fruit trees. These are Cercis species. They're all generally hardy, zones 4 to 9. They all have gorgeous lavender pink flowers in spring. These all grow in the range of 20 to 30 feet high and wide. Also, all of these trees have great fall color. The second classic plant that I think there are some great alternatives to are hydrangeas. Now, these are the mophead hydrangeas, Hydrangea macrophylla. Problems with hydrangea are that the flower buds tend to be killed off by late freezes or pruned off accidentally. They're also not so great in dry areas. Now, there's some really good alternatives sometimes in the same genus as some of these species of plants. There are two different types of hydrangeas that I think are great. One is smooth hydrangea, Hydrangea arborescens. These are hardy to zone 3 to 8, so they're hardier than Hydrangea macrophylla. If you want nice color, look for Invincibelle Spirit, which grows to 4 feet tall and wide. It has pink flowers in the summertime. Haas Halo is a variety that has really beautiful white flowers. It's hardy zone 3 to 9 and grows up to 5 feet tall and wide. Now, these two don't change color based on your soil pH either. Varieties of mountain hydrangea are also great. Hydrangea serrata. Try Blue Billow, hardy to zone 6 through 9. It grows to about 4 feet tall and 10 feet wide. And it is hardy to zone 5 with protection. Now, this one will be pink or blue depending on your soil pH. Outside of the hydrangea genus, I think that Sargent's viburnum is an excellent hydrangea alternative, especially a variety called Onondaga. This plant is hardy zones 3 to 7, gets about 12 to 15 feet high and wide, and it has billowy flowers in early summer, much like hydrangeas, that are dark red, but they're ringed with a ring of white flowers. Unlike hydrangeas, this plant has great fall color. All of these do best in part sun to part shade, and I would say shade in the hottest part of the day for sure. The third classic garden favorite that I think there are good alternatives to is miscanthus or silvergrass. Now, the problem with miscanthus is that it's really become an invasive species in many parts of the U.S. There are lots of cultivars, but a lot of them will revert and set seed, and then those seedlings will go out into the ecosystem and harm native plants. So one good alternative to miscanthus is frostgrass or Spodiopogon sibericus. This plant is hardy from zones 5 through 9 and grows up to 5 feet high and 2 feet wide. It looks like bamboo, which is really nice, especially because it's not invasive. It also has nice flowers in late summer, much like miscanthus, and great fall color, which is not really a common thing for grasses. I think that switchgrass cultivars are also an excellent miscanthus alternative. Now, this is Panicum virgatum. I especially like the cultivar Northwind. This is a really tried and true plant. It's been around for a while now, and it just gets better and better. It's hardy to zones 5 through 9, tops out at 6 feet high, about 2.5 feet wide. It's this sort of steely blue column of spiky foliage, has airy flowers in late summer. Really, really beautiful grass. The final one is feather reed grass or Calamagrostis. There are several cultivars of these. You've probably seen Carl Forster, which is really common. It's become a bit ubiquitous. I love also the cultivar Eldorado, which has gold-edged foliage. This is a great one for fans of variegated plants. These are hardy zones 4 through 9. They grow to about 5 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. All of these grasses do well with full sun and average soil. Switchgrass and featherreed grass are definitely more drought resistant. The last plant that I want to offer some alternatives to is a really old-fashioned garden favorite, Delphinium. I think that it's declined a bit in popularity in the past few years, probably because it's really hard for most people to grow. People love it because it has these tall spikes of really beautiful flowers in summertime, blue, lavender, pink, white. They're just gorgeous. The issue with Delphinium is that it needs really specific things in terms of temperatures, humidity, soil, things like that. And a lot of people across the country don't have those conditions. There are lots of great alternatives for perennials, though, with spikes in the same color range that make great vertical accents like delphinium. The first one is anise hyssop. These are cultivars of agastache, especially the cultivars Blue Fortune and Blackadder. These are hardy zone 6 through 9 and zone 5 with protection, especially with good drainage. That's sort of key with these. They get to about 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. They have blue lavender flowers in the summertime, really fragrant foliage, which is nice, and they're great butterfly plants too. The second alternative for delphinium is cultivars of salvia. There are salvia cultivars that do great in every climate. Two of my favorites are Salvia verticillata Purple Rain, which is hardy zones 5 through 8, and grows to about 18 inches high and wide. And the second is Purple Salvia Amistad, which is hardy zones 8 through 10, but makes a great annual elsewhere. This one grows to about 4 feet high and wide. It's a big plant. These are both summer bloomers, and I think for most people will have a longer bloom season than delphinium too. The final delphinium alternative I would offer would be false indigo or Baptisia australis. This is a native plant, hardy in zones 3 through 9. It grows to about 4 feet high and wide. It has great spikes of blue flowers early summer, but there are lots and lots of cultivars on the market now that come in lots of different colors and also different sizes. One I think that's especially great is called Purple Smoke. All of these plants, though, are tough plants. They grow best in full sun, and they're drought resistant once established. Now, if you've had bad luck with these old-fashioned garden favorites, but the alternatives that I offered here aren't to your liking, just don't give up. Learn some more about your climate and your site, your soil conditions, your light conditions, all of these things, and then get out there and do some shopping. There's always something new and interesting to discover at your local nursery, and there's bound to be something out there that will suit your garden, even if the thing that you were sort of hoping to plant isn't the right thing.
So, Steve, that was really interesting. I was wondering if Andy was going to cover any of the plants that he covered in his previous article, but it was refreshing to see what he's come up with now as all new improvements on classic favorites. It's funny what 2 or 3, 4, 5 years will do.
Yeah, but my plant list of things to buy just keeps getting longer and longer.
Me too.